There is a moment when a single decision inside a family can rewrite everything you thought you knew. Right now, reports are pointing to one of those moments, and the person at the center of it reportedly had no warning. Not a phone call, not a heads up, just the realization that something massive was already in motion. The question isn't whether it happened. The question is what it actually means for the people involved, for the institution around them, and for what comes next. Because if the reports are even partially true, this is not just another tabloid story. It cuts into something deeper, something that has been building for years. And the most revealing part might not be the announcement itself, but the way it was received behind closed doors. I want to walk you through what has been reported, what has not been confirmed, and why this moment could turn out to be far more significant than a simple change of address. So let's start with the claim that has suddenly put the Sussexes back at the top of every royal conversation. According to several outlets, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have been quietly preparing for an extended return to Britain with their two children. Not a short visit, not a holiday, an extended period that would require a proper residence, schooling considerations, and a new set of security arrangements. That alone would be a major story. But the part that has reportedly caused the most tension inside the family is that Prince William was not brought into the loop before this plan started taking shape. Sources close to the situation have claimed that William learned about the possibility through indirect channels, and that his reaction was one of deep frustration. Now, I should be very clear here. None of this has been officially confirmed by Kensington Palace or by representatives for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. This is based on reports, anonymous sources, and what people close to the family have allegedly described. But even as an unconfirmed story, it raises a lot of questions. Why now? Why would Harry and Meghan want to spend significant time back in the UK after everything that has happened? And why would William feel blindsided rather than relieved or optimistic? To understand that, you have to go back to the way the relationship between the brothers has changed over the last few years. In early 2020, Harry and Meghan announced that they were stepping back as senior working royals. They eventually settled in Montecito, California, and built a life that was largely separate from the royal institution. Since then, the distance between them and the rest of the family has been more than geographic. There have been interviews, a documentary series, a memoir, legal disputes, and a steady stream of headlines that often place the brothers on opposite sides of a very public divide. Trust, according to royal watchers, has been one of the biggest casualties. That matters because trust is the thing that determines whether a private family conversation stays private or becomes front-page news. If William felt that he was left out of a decision that could directly affect his own household, his public role, and the institution he will one day lead, then frustration is not a surprising reaction. It is, in some ways, the most predictable part of this entire story. The reports themselves are coming from a mix of British and American outlets. Some cite unnamed palace insiders, others cite friends of the couple, still others point to sources in the legal and security world. That kind of sourcing is common in royal reporting, but it also means that the line between fact and interpretation can blur quickly. One source might describe a conversation as a firm plan. Another might describe the same conversation as a loose possibility. The difference matters, and it is often lost in the rush to publish. What does it actually mean to be blindsided in this context? It means, according to those who claim to know, that William had no prior indication that an extended return was being seriously considered. He reportedly did not receive a direct message from Harry. He did not have a formal meeting with his father about it. He learned about the possibility through the same channels as everyone else. If true, that is a remarkable breakdown in communication for a family that already struggles with trust. William's frustration, if real, is not hard to understand. He has spent years trying to keep his own family's life as stable as possible. He has taken on more responsibilities since becoming Prince of Wales. He has dealt with his own private challenges. The idea of a sudden, high-profile return by his brother would inevitably create new pressures. It would also force him to revisit old wounds that have never fully healed. Even if he wanted to be supportive, the lack of communication would make that difficult. William and Harry grew up in a very specific kind of spotlight. They lost their mother at a young age and then were forced to grieve in public. That shared experience bonded them for a long time. But as adults, they took different paths. William embraced duty and the steady work of being a future king. Harry began to question the system that had shaped him. Those are not incompatible paths, but they are very different. Over time, those differences turned into distance, and distance turned into estrangement. The public has a long memory when it comes to this family. Many people remember the images of William and Harry walking together as young men. They remember the wedding of Harry and Meghan when the brothers seemed close and the future seemed bright. That memory makes the current situation feel even more striking. It is not just that they are estranged, it is that the estrangement has become so normal that the idea of them reuniting is treated as a major shift. News event. Archie and Lilibet have spent most of their lives in California. Archie was born in London in 2019, but he was still very young when his parents moved. Lilibet was born in the United States and has only made a handful of visits to the UK. An extended stay would mean a completely different rhythm for them. It would mean new routines, new faces, and a much closer proximity to a family they have rarely seen in person. That is a huge adjustment for any child, but especially for children whose lives have been shaped by intense public interest. Frogmore Cottage, which was their official UK residence, was returned to the Crown in 2023. That property is no longer available to them in the same way. So if they are planning an extended stay, the first practical question is where they would live. There have been reports suggesting they might use a property on royal grounds or secure a private residence, but nothing has been confirmed. The logistics alone are complicated. Security is another layer. Harry has publicly stated that he does not feel his family is safe in the UK without certain protections. He has taken legal action over decisions related to his security arrangements. That legal history is still part of the conversation. Any extended return would require a clear answer to the security question, and that answer would likely involve public money, private funding, or some combination of the two. For many people in Britain, the question of who pays for what is not just a family matter, it is a public concern. From William's perspective, according to those who claim to know him, the issue is not simply that Harry and Meghan want to come back. It is that the decision appears to have been made without any meaningful consultation with the family members who would be most affected. William has spent the last few years trying to focus on his own work, his own young family, and his responsibilities as Prince of Wales. He has also had to deal with ongoing public scrutiny of his relationship with his brother. If a major change was coming, he would likely have expected to hear about it directly, not through leaks or media reports. The fact that he reportedly did not speaks volumes about the current state of communication. The monarchy operates on a delicate balance. It depends on continuity, predictability, and a clear line of authority. When a non-working member of the royal family makes a high-profile move back into that orbit, it raises questions about roles, funding, public engagement, and the message it sends. This is not like an ordinary family welcoming someone home. Every move is interpreted, analyzed, and often used in a larger narrative. King Charles III, for his part, has reportedly wanted to have a closer relationship with his grandchildren. There have been claims that he would welcome more time with Archie and Lilibet, but at the same time, he has to manage the needs of the institution and the expectations of the public. A sudden, extended return by the Sussexes would create both opportunities and complications for him. On one hand, it could allow for private family moments. On the other, it could reignite tensions that have only recently started to settle into a more predictable pattern. There are several theories about why Harry and Meghan might be considering an extended return now. Some reports point to a desire to give their children a closer connection to their British heritage. Others suggest that after several years in California, the couple has been reconsidering what their long-term future looks like. There are also practical considerations, including business opportunities, media projects, and legal matters that require a presence in the UK. None of these have been confirmed, but they all feed into the same central question. Is this a genuine step toward reconciliation, or is it something else entirely? In Britain, the tabloids have responded with their usual intensity. Some headlines have framed this as a hopeful sign that the family rift could finally begin to heal. Others have treated it as a source of fresh chaos. The truth, as is often the case, probably sits somewhere in the middle. What makes this story different is that it is not just about two brothers who do not get along. It's about the future of an institution that relies on public trust. Every decision made by the Sussexes has a ripple effect, and this one could be the largest ripple yet. One of the reasons William may be so frustrated is that he has seen private family conversations become public before. There have been allegations that private discussions were shared with journalists or used in books and interviews. Whether those allegations are true or not, the effect has been a deep sense of caution. In an environment like that, being left out of the loop is not just an inconvenience, it feels like a breach of trust. And once trust is broken, even the smallest action can feel like a deliberate provocation. Let's talk about what an extended return might actually look like in practical terms. First, there's the matter of a residence. The Sussexes would need a home that meets their security requirements and offers enough privacy for their children. Second, there is schooling. Archie is at an age where his education is becoming a major consideration. If they are spending extended time in Britain, they would need to decide whether he attends school locally or continues with some form of alternative education. Third, there is the question of public appearances. Would they attend official events? Would they resume any royal duties? Or would this be a purely private arrangement? The answers to those questions would determine how the public and the press respond. It is important to draw a distinction between a short visit and an extended stay. A short visit can be managed. A long stay changes everything.
It brings with it questions about visas, taxes, charitable work, and the couple's ongoing business ventures in the United States. It also changes the way the royal household has to plan its own calendar. If Harry and Meghan are in the country for months at a time, their presence becomes a factor in everything from security planning to media management. That is not a small thing. Public opinion in Britain is split. Some people feel that Harry and Meghan should be welcomed back as family members, plain and simple. Others feel that their previous public statements have caused lasting damage and that a return should come with clear boundaries. Polls over the years have shown fluctuating levels of support for the couple. What is clear is that they remain one of the most polarizing subjects in modern royal history. Any extended stay would put that polarization front and center again, and that is exactly the kind of thing William has reportedly wanted to avoid. William has 3 young children of his own. His priority, according to those who follow him closely, is to give them as normal a childhood as possible. The constant media attention surrounding Harry and Meghan has often made that more difficult. If the Sussexes were to spend significant time in the UK, that attention would likely intensify. It could also create awkward moments at family gatherings, public events, or even casual outings. For a man who values stability, the idea of an unpredictable new chapter may feel like the last thing he needs. Let's be precise about what the reports actually claim. Some sources say the possibility of an extended return has been discussed internally for a while. Others claim that William only learned about it recently and that his frustration was immediate. There is no official statement, no confirmed timeline, and no clear indication of whether this is an active plan or simply a possibility that has been floated. That lack of clarity is part of why the story has generated so much interest. People are filling in the gaps with their own assumptions, and that rarely leads to a calm conversation. The royal family has been through an extraordinary period of change. The death of Queen Elizabeth II, the transition to a new reign, ongoing health issues, and the departure of senior working royals have all tested the institution. Adding a high-profile return to that mix would create another layer of uncertainty, but it could also offer a chance to rewrite the narrative. The question is whether the people involved are willing to do the difficult work required to make that happen. Based on the current reports, that willingness is far from clear. Money is another factor that cannot be ignored. The Sussexes have built a life in California that is largely independent of the royal family. They have commercial deals, charitable work, and a media presence that generates income. An extended stay in Britain would raise questions about how that financial independence fits with their royal connections. Would they be seen as private citizens or as public figures? Would they receive any public funding? These are not trivial questions, and they have no easy answers. Then there is the legal dimension. Harry has been involved in several court cases in the UK, many of them related to privacy and security. Those cases have kept him tied to Britain, even while living overseas. An extended return would place him back in the middle of that legal landscape, with all the scrutiny that comes with it. It could also affect ongoing proceedings and create new legal questions about his status and his family's status. For someone who has spoken publicly about wanting to protect his family, the legal risks are significant. To be fair, there is a version of this story where an extended return works. Harry and Meghan could spend meaningful time with their children in a country that holds deep family history. Archie and Lilibet could build relationships with cousins and grandparents. The public could see a more connected family. The brothers could, over time, find a way to coexist. But all of that depends on trust, communication, and a willingness to set aside past grievances. And right now, according to the reports, those ingredients are in short supply. The opposite version is easier to imagine. And return without clear communication could deepen the divide. It could lead to more leaks, more headlines, and more private moments turned into public spectacle. It could put the children in an impossible position. It could place additional strain on William and Catherine, who have their own responsibilities and their own challenges. In that version, the extended stay becomes not a healing process, but a new source of conflict. That is why the reports of William's frustration matter so much. They suggest that the emotional foundation for a smooth return simply may not exist right now. One thing that stands out in all of this is the silence. Neither Kensington Palace nor Buckingham Palace has commented publicly on the reports. That is not unusual. The royal family rarely responds to every headline, and they often prefer to let stories run their course. But silence can also be its own message. It can signal that the family is still trying to figure out how to handle the situation, or that there are private conversations happening that no one wants to disrupt. It can also mean that the reports are being taken seriously enough that a public statement is considered too risky. We do not know which of those possibilities is true, but the silence itself is notable. The British press has a complicated relationship with both Harry and Meghan. There have been legal disputes, public criticism, and a lot of bad blood. That history makes any new chapter especially volatile. If the Sussexes return for an extended period, the media coverage will be relentless. Every outing, every appearance, every choice will be scrutinized. That level of attention.
This is hard for any family to endure, and it has already taken a toll on this one. The possibility of bringing that intensity back to Britain is something that William, according to reports, is deeply concerned about. We often talk about this story from the perspective of the adults, but the children are the ones who would experience the biggest change. Archie and Lilibet have grown up with a certain amount of privacy in California. They have not had to deal with the daily presence of the British press. An extended stay in the UK would change that. It would mean new schools, new friends, and a new awareness of their own public identity. That is a lot to ask of children who are still very young. It is also something that would require careful planning, not just a sudden announcement. William and Harry occupy very different positions in the royal family. William is the heir to the throne. Harry is no longer a working royal. That difference shapes everything. William has to think about the long-term stability of the monarchy. Harry has more freedom to make personal choices, but he also carries the weight of his own public profile. When those two realities collide, friction is almost inevitable. The current reports suggest that friction is already there, and it is not going away anytime soon. Why would Harry and Meghan want to do this? There are a few possibilities. Maybe they genuinely miss Britain and want their children to know that side of their heritage. Maybe they see an opportunity to build a different kind of relationship with the royal family. Maybe there are personal or professional reasons that have not been made public. Or maybe the reports are simply wrong. Without official confirmation, we cannot know. But the fact that the story has gained so much traction suggests that people are hungry for any sign of change in this family dynamic. It is also worth remembering that royal reporting is not always accurate. There have been many stories over the years that turned out to be exaggerated or completely untrue. Anonymous sources can have their own agendas, leaks can be selective, and sometimes what is reported as a major development is actually just a small possibility that has been blown out of proportion. So while the reports about William's frustration are compelling, they should be treated with a healthy degree of skepticism. That does not mean they are false, it just means we do not yet have the full picture. So what should you watch for in the coming days and weeks? First, any official statement from the Sussexes or the palace. Second, any signs of movement, such as property purchases, school enrollments, or changes in security arrangements. Third, any public appearances that would indicate a shift in their usual pattern. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, any change in the way the brothers interact, even indirectly through their representatives. Those are the clues that will tell us whether this story is developing into something real or fading into the background. From where I sit, this feels like one of those moments where the private and the public are impossible to separate. You have a family that has been through a very public fracture, and now there are reports that one side wants to come back, while the other side is reportedly struggling to accept it. That is a deeply human situation, even when it is dressed up in royal titles and media speculation. The emotions involved are universal: hurt, mistrust, hope, frustration, and the longing for things to be better. What makes it unique is the scale of the spotlight. If there is one thing this story highlights, it is the importance of direct communication. Time and again, we see situations like this become more painful because people did not talk to each other early enough. According to the reports, William did not hear about the plan directly. Whether that's true or not, it points to a breakdown that has been years in the making. And until that breakdown is addressed, no change of address will fix what is really wrong. The longer-term question is what this means for the monarchy itself. The institution has survived many crises, but it has also changed in response to them. A high-profile return by the Sussexes would force the family to confront questions about modern roles, public accountability, and the limits of personal freedom. Those are not questions that can be answered by a single announcement. They will play out over years, and the way they are handled will shape how the public views the royal family for a generation. There is a cost to silence, too. Every day that passes without clarity, the speculation grows. Stories like this thrive on uncertainty. If the family wants to reduce the temperature, they may need to say something eventually. But saying something also carries risk. It could confirm the reports, deny them, or open up entirely new lines of inquiry. That is the trap of living in the public eye. You are always choosing between one kind of damage and another. At the end of the day, this is about real people. William is a father and a future king. Harry is a husband and a father trying to protect his family in his own way. Meghan is navigating a role that has been both celebrated and criticized. The children are innocent. The grandparents are aging. There are no perfect decisions, only difficult trade-offs. That is why the tone of this conversation matters. It is possible to discuss the public implications without losing sight of the private pain. Could an extended return actually lead to reconciliation? It is possible. Sometimes proximity forces people to confront issues that distance has allowed to avoid. But proximity can also make things worse. It depends on whether both sides are ready to listen. Right now, the reports suggest that one side is feeling frustrated and unpleasantly surprised.
Other side is feeling misunderstood. That is not a strong starting point. But it is not the end of the story either. There is also a symbolic layer to this. Archie and Lilibet carry names that connect them to the royal family in subtle ways. Lilibet's name, in particular, is tied to a deeply personal family history. Bringing those children back to Britain for an extended period would be a powerful statement about belonging. It would say that despite everything, this family still has roots. Whether that statement is welcomed by everyone is another question entirely. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, has had her own challenges in recent years.
She has focused on her health and her young family. The last thing she reportedly needs is additional stress. If the Sussexes return, it could create new demands on her time and energy, even if she is not directly involved. That is part of the unspoken tension in this story. It is not just about two brothers, it's about two households, each trying to find its own way under intense public pressure. King Charles, Queen Camilla, and other family members all have their own perspectives. Some may welcome the idea of a more complete family. Others may worry about the practical and reputational consequences. The royal family is not a monolith. It is made up of individuals with their own histories, loyalties, and concerns. That is why the reports of William's frustration are only one piece of a much larger puzzle. There is a version of this story where the Sussexes return not as working royals, but as private citizens who happen to be related to the king. That would be a new model for the family. It would require clear boundaries and a lot of trust. It would also require the British public to accept a more flexible definition of what it means to be royal. Whether the country is ready for that is an open question. Other royal families around Europe have dealt with similar situations in different ways. Some have allowed non-working members to step back entirely. Others have maintained a more integrated approach. The British monarchy has historically been slow to change, but it has changed. This could be another example of that evolution, or it could be a step too far. Only time will tell. Timing matters in stories like this. If the Sussexes are planning an extended return, the timing would be significant. It could coincide with family milestones, anniversaries, or other events. It could also be designed to test public reaction before a more permanent decision is made. Without a clear timeline, it is impossible to know. But the fact that this is being discussed at all suggests that something is shifting behind the scenes. Narrative is a powerful thing. Harry and Meghan have their own narrative. Harry has his. The palace has its own. When those narratives collide, the result is often confusion and conflict. The truth is usually more complicated than any single story. That is why it is important to look at the evidence, consider the sources, and resist the urge to jump to conclusions. For the rest of us, this story is a window into a world that is both fascinating and deeply flawed. It shows how even the most privileged people can struggle with family, trust, and communication. It also shows how public attention can make those struggles worse. We watch because we see something familiar in it, even if the setting is extraordinary. There is a risk in speculating too much. The more we fill in the blanks, the further we may get from the truth. That is why I keep returning to the same point. These are reports, not confirmed facts. They should be treated as a starting point, not a conclusion. The responsible thing is to stay curious, but not certain. In the next day or two, we may learn more. A spokesperson may issue a statement, a reporter may confirm a detail, or the story may simply fade. Royal news moves fast, but it also repeats itself. The patterns are familiar. What is less familiar is the intensity of feeling that this particular story has generated. That alone tells you something about the stakes. The emotional core of this story is not about titles or properties or security. It is about two brothers who once seemed inseparable and now seem unable to find common ground. That is a painful thing to witness, no matter what side you're on. And it is made even more painful by the fact that it is happening in public, with every detail dissected by millions of people. There is also a hope that whatever happens, the children will be protected from the worst of it. They did not choose this life. They deserve the chance to grow up without being turned into symbols. An extended return would put them closer to the spotlight, and that is a real concern. It is one of the reasons why this decision, if it is real, should be handled with extraordinary care. There is another angle that often gets lost in the noise, the practical reality of royal residences. The royal family owns and manages a number of properties, but very few of them are available for a family that is not carrying out official duties. A private residence would give the Sussexes more control, but it would also raise questions about how they fund it and how they secure it. A royal property would carry symbolic weight, but it would come with strings attached. There is no perfect option, and that is one of the reasons why this decision is so difficult. The royal family's relationship with money is always under scrutiny. Public funding, private income, and the value of royal residences are all matters of public debate. If the Sussexes return, those debates will intensify. The couple has made a point of financial independence, but that independence is harder to achieve. Maintain when you are living in one of the most expensive countries in the world, while also trying to maintain a presence in another. The concept of a half-in, half-out royal has been debated for years. It has never been fully resolved because the traditional model is built on clear lines. You are either in or you are out. Harry and Meghan have tried to create a third path. An extended return would test whether that third path is actually sustainable or whether it simply creates more confusion. Harry's legal situation in the UK is not just about security, it is also about his status as a public figure with a unique set of vulnerabilities. He has argued that his family faces risks that are different from those faced by other public figures. Whether one agrees with that argument or not, it is a central part of why this decision is so complicated. The children's privacy is the one area where almost everyone agrees. Even the most critical commentators tend to draw a line when it comes to Archie and Lilibet. That shared concern could be a foundation for a more careful approach, but it could also be used as a reason to avoid making any move at all. If the Sussexes do return, the palace will have to decide how to present them. Are they private citizens who happen to be related to the king, or are they a branch of the royal family that deserves official recognition? That distinction has never been fully settled, and it has caused friction from the very beginning of their departure. The public's memory of the 2020 split is still fresh. Many people remember the sense of shock and confusion that surrounded the initial announcement. Some felt that Harry and Meghan were rejecting the family. Others felt that they were escaping an impossible situation. Those competing interpretations have not gone away. They are still the lens through which many people view this new report. There is also the question of whether this is a trial balloon. Sometimes stories like this are deliberately placed to see how the public and the palace will react. If the reaction is positive, the plan moves forward. If the reaction is negative, the plan is quietly dropped. That is a common tactic in political and royal communication. It means that the very existence of this story could be part of a larger strategy. The difference between an announcement and an action is crucial. An announcement is a promise. An action is a fact. Right now, we have neither. We have only reports. That is an important distinction, and it is one that is often ignored in the rush to make sense of a fast-moving story. The story also intersects with larger cultural debates about mental health and privacy. Harry and Meghan have spoken openly about their struggles and their desire to protect their family. Those themes resonate with many people, but they also invite criticism from those who feel that the couple wants the benefits of royal life without the responsibilities. An extended return would force a conversation about what those responsibilities actually are, and whether they can be shared or redefined. Some observers believe this could be a chance for the royal family to modernize. Others think it could be a step too far. What is clear is that the old rules no longer apply. The royal family is operating in a new media environment, and every decision is magnified. The next few weeks will be critical. They will tell us whether this is a real shift or just another cycle of speculation. I will be watching for 3 specific signals. First, any movement in the property market that could be linked to the Sussexes. Second, any change in the children's education arrangements. Third, any formal comment from the palace that addresses the reports directly, even if it is only a denial. Those signals will matter more than any anonymous quote. For now, the only thing we can do is pay attention to the facts as they emerge, separate what is known from what is rumored, and remember that behind every headline there are real people trying to figure out their lives. This is a story that will keep developing. The next chapter is already being written, and it may look very different from what anyone expects. That's the thing about this family. Just when you think you understand the pattern, something shifts, and this time, the shift could be bigger than anything we have seen in years. The reports may turn out to be wrong, or they may turn out to be only the beginning. Either way, the questions they raise are not going away. What does it mean to belong to a family that is also an institution? Can trust be rebuilt after years of public conflict? And is there a version of this story where both brothers find a way to move forward without losing themselves? Those questions are larger than any headline. They are the real reason this story matters. And that is exactly why the world is watching.